Welcome back, book buddies! Today we are going to read 24 Disney princess books. We have finished opening up our advent calendar, so let's just read them all in one big go. Day 1. Cinderella's Best Ever Creations. Every year, Princess Cinderella receives invites to many grand events around the kingdom. But her favourite invitation of all is to the harvest dance in her neighbouring village. This year, Cinderella wanted to do something special for the villagers. I know, she said to her mice friends. There are 4 little girls in the village. I'm going to make each of them a new dress. That's a great idea, squeaked Jack. Those little girls will feel so special, Gus clapped. So Cinderella set to work creating the first beautiful little dress. First she laid out the fabric, next she cut out the pattern, then she sewed together all of the pieces. Finally, the first dress was done. Cinderella worked hard to complete the other 3. On the day of the celebration, Cinderella filled the carriage with her 4 new creations. The mice hopped in too. As they reached the village, the girls ran out to greet them. Here they come, squeaked Gus. But wait, shouted Jack. There are 5 of them. There must be a new family in the village, said Cinderella. What are we going to do? Cinderella stepped down from the carriage. To thank you all for inviting me. I wanted to surprise you all new dresses, she said. But I'm afraid I've only made 4. Don't worry though. I have an idea for how to make a 5th. What if we all shared parts of our new dresses? Asked the eldest girl. Then maybe there'll be enough cloth to make our friend a dress too. My thoughts exactly, said Cinderella. Would you all like to help? The girls didn't waste a moment. They carried their dresses to a nearby table and laid them down gently. Snip, snip, snip went the scissors as Cinderella carefully cut off some ruffles. Swish, swoosh rustled the cloth as Jacques, Gus and the girls gathered it all up. As Cinderella started assembling the new dress, the girls found more ways to share. You can use some purple bows from my dress for decoration, said one of the girls. Here, some blue fabric from mine, added another. Here's my yellow fabric, added another. And some of my pink fabric, added yet another. Tweet, 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 sang the birds as they helped Cinderella sew together the bows and the fabric. When Cinderella was finished, she gave each of the 5 girls a new dress. Thank you, they shouted. My thanks to you all, said Cinderella. With your help, those dresses have become some of my best ever creations. Let's celebrate, squeaked Jack. This way, said the oldest girl, taking Cinderella by hand. Yep, giggled Gus. Let's dance. The end. Day 2. A Christmas gift for Chip. It was Christmas Eve at the castle. The enchanted objects didn't usually exchange presents, but they loved to decorate the library and trim the tree. Belle was eager to help and placed a pair of her shoes by the fireplace. What are you doing, Belle? Chip asked. When I was a little girl, my father and I would leave out our shoes on Christmas Eve for Papa Noel to fill them with treats, Belle explained. In that moment, Belle missed her father very much. Just then, Chip's expression changed. What's the matter? Belle asked. I'm a teacup, Chip said, hopping into Belle's palm. I don't wear shoes. What if Papa Noel can't find me? Belle smiled. You might be a teacup now, but you weren't always. Do you have any of your old shoes lying around? Yep, Chip replied. All the enchanted objects do. Belle and Chip jumped into action. They raced from room to room, gathering up pairs of old shoes for Chip, Mrs. Potts, Lumiere, and Cogsworth. Once the pairs were gathered, Belle and Chip made their way back to the library. They neatly arranged the shoes in front of the fireplace, then took a step back to admire their work. A little while later, Mrs. Potts announced it was bedtime for Chip. But I'm not tired, Chip said, swallowing a yawn. But Mrs. Potts and Belle exchanged a smile, then tucked the sleepy teacup into the cupboard. Soon after, Belle and Mrs. Potts returned to the library to reunite with Cogsworth and Lumiere. I'd like to do something special for Chip, Belle said. Lumiere thought for a moment. Long before the master was turned into a beast, he was a little boy living in his castle, he explained. Many of his old toys are still there. Perhaps you could give one to Chip. Belle's face brightened. That's a wonderful idea, she cried. Mrs. Potts was touched. That part of the castle is off limits, Cogsworth said nervously. He was afraid to break the rules. Lumiere, however, loved a bit of mischief. They made their way into the beast's childhood bedroom. It was gorgeous, a bit messy. This chamber hasn't been opened for years, Mrs. Potts said. It holds too many sad memories. But Belle was only partially listening. Her eyes were drawn to a set of toy carriages. This could be perfect, she whispered. Suddenly, the beast burst into the room. How dare you enter here, he shouted. Everyone shuddered with fear, but Belle refused to be intimidated. I was trying to find a gift for Chip, she said, finding her courage. He helped me share a Papa Noel tradition with the castle, and I wanted to reward him for his kindness. It's Christmas Eve, after all. The beast had no patience for this. Get out, he shouted. Faced with no other choice, Belle and the enchanted objects took refuge in the kitchen. Is he always this unreasonable? Asked Belle. Mrs. Potts tried to explain. Soon after he lost his mother, he lost his favourite toy she had given him, a white horse with blue eyes and a black mane, she revealed. Out of sadness and anger, he closed up that room forever, along with his heart. Belle felt sorry for the beast, but she wouldn't stay swayed. As the enchanted objects drifted off to sleep, Belle returned to the beast's childhood room. While searching for Chip's gift, she found a ball of string and a music box. Then she happened upon a pair of beast's shoes from when he was a little boy. Sitting in the beast's shoes aside, Belle turned to the toys in front of her. With a little tinkering, she knew she could create something wonderful for Chip, being the daughter of an inventor. Belle had plenty of experience with things like this, and somehow working this way made her father feel close by. Belle lined up the carriages and tied them together. Then she took apart the winding mechanism from the music box and put it into the first carriage. Belle looked long into the night. Now all she needed was something to wrap the gift with. She opened a drawer and deep in the back found a spool of red ribbon. Perfect, Belle whispered as she reached inside. But behind the spool, Belle discovered something even more precious. It was the beast's lost horse. Ever so gently, Belle held the toy in her hands. You've been dearly missed, she said. It's about time you were found. Belle knew exactly what she had to do next. First, she fashioned a few bows out of the red ribbon. She placed some of Chip's carriages and wrapped a large one around the horse's neck. Then she made her way to the beast's current bedroom. She carefully placed the prince's shoes outside the door, with the toy horse resting inside. She knocked, then slipped away. When the beast opened the door, he immediately recognized his long-lost favorite toy. Where did you come from? He asked, hardly containing his delight. Belle smiled to herself. She had been hiding behind a nearby pillar and watched as the surprise melted Beast's anger into joy. She had a feeling it was going to be a very merry Christmas indeed. Before heading off to bed, Belle stopped at the library and placed the carriages by Chip's shoes, then hurried back to her room. She couldn't wait for tomorrow. The next morning, Christmas arrived. Belle and the enchanted objects hurried into the library. The objects usually enjoyed a cozy fire in a freshly decorated room, but this year something magical had happened. "Well, bless my soul," Mrs. Potts explained. She then directed everyone's attention towards the fireplace. Each pair of shoes had filled with treats and surprises. "Papa Noel did come," Chip shouted. "He found us." Belle couldn't believe it. When she left the carriages for Chip last night, the shoes were empty, but now every pair was full and bursting. Then Belle scooped Chip up. "Papa Noel brought us most of this," she said to the teacup, "but the carriages are from me to you. Thanks for all your help yesterday." "Wow," Chip replied. "Thanks, Belle." Belle smiled and then revealed the final surprise. "These may look like ordinary carriages, but they're not. These carriages can move on their own," she explained. She turned the crank and the carriages drove by themselves, as if by magic. Just then, the Beast poked his head into the library. Belle convinced the Beast to join them, and he walked over to the fireplace. "I'm sorry I was so angry yesterday," the Beast confessed. "I didn't see you get angry," Chip said. "That's right," the Beast said, turning to the young teacup. "You didn't. But I heard you played a big role in bringing Papa Noel back to the castle." Chip blushed and hopped onto the Beast's shoulder. The Beast presented Chip with a toy horse from his youth. "This horse was very special to me. I need someone very special to look after it. I was hoping that it could be you," the Beast explained. "I'll be honored," Chip replied. A happy tear ran down Mrs. Potts's cheek, and Belle's heart swelled. It was the happiest Christmas that anyone could remember. The end. Day 3. A Place to Belong. One sunny morning, Jasmine and Aladdin were sitting down for breakfast when the royal chef arrived with a bright blue cake. "What's this for?" Aladdin asked. Then his ears turned pink as he turned to Jasmine. "Oh no, I didn't forget your birthday, did I?" "No, silly," she said with a laugh. "Look, there's a message written in the icing. 'I'll see you really soon, love, Genie.'" "The genie is coming to visit," Aladdin exclaimed. "But when is really soon?" Puff! With a display of sparks and confetti, the genie burst through the top of the cake. "Hiya, Al! What's shaking, Jasmine?" the genie said. The genie's friends rushed over and gave him a big hug. I bought you guys some presents," the genie said. "A hat for Aladdin, a robe for Jasmine, a ruby necklace for Abu, a T-bone for Raja, and some odds and ends for this cute cottage you call home," the genie continued. "There was a gorgeous rug for the throne room, a flowering plant for the garden, and—" "What's this thing anyway?" asked Jasmine. "Never mind that," the genie replied. "You're so thoughtful," Jasmine told the genie. "Can you stay a while?" "Yes," Aladdin chimed in. "As our guest, you can have your pick of any room in the palace." "That sounds like fun," the genie said. "Palace tour time." Jasmine led the genie to her favorite spot, the pillow room. Colorful cushions were scattered around the room in comfy piles. "Spectacular," the genie said, before trotting out of the room. "It's ideal. Next." "Why not this room?" Jasmine whispered to Aladdin. He shrugged. "Come on," the genie called from the hallway. "The perfect room awaits." Jasmine led the friends upstairs to another guest room. "It's a bit dark, isn't it?" the genie said. Jasmine agreed. They tried the Jafar's old lair, but it wasn't right either. Too creepy, the genie said. Next, Jasmine led Genie and the gang to the treasure room. "Looky here," said the genie. "My old lamp. Boy, have I missed this thing. Not. But it still might be worth it to visit my old stomping grounds. What do you say?" With a snap of his fingers, the genie brought everyone inside the lamp. It was impossibly cramped. "Get us out of here," Aladdin shouted. Puff! With a puff of blue smoke, the friends were free. "Well, that was awful," Aladdin said. "Hard to believe I spent 10,000 years in that thing," the genie said. "Good riddance." "Let's see what other options we have," Jasmine suggested. The genie's friends showed him many different rooms, but he found something he didn't like about every last one. Too empty, too fancy, too drafty, too green, too quiet. Everyone left the tour feeling a little deflated. They decided to take a break for some afternoon tea. Jasmine pulled the genie aside. "Are you okay?" she asked. "It seems like you're not happy in any room, which makes me wonder if something else is going on." The genie gave Jasmine a pained look. Something was bothering him, he realized. A tear rolled down his cheek. "When Aladdin freed me from the lamp," the genie began, "I couldn't wait to get out and see the world. And it was great for a while. But then I started missing my friends. So I came here and seeing you all in your happy home, well, it makes me wish I had a place where I belong." Jasmine smiled. "It sounds to me like you don't need a guest room," she said. "You need a home. And I'm happy to tell you it's right here with all of us." Jasmine, Aladdin, Raja, and Abu wrapped the genie in a warm embrace. "Thanks, friends," the genie said. He was feeling better, but not totally relieved. "There's just one tiny incy-wincy problem." "What's that?" Jasmine said. "We still don't know which room I'm going to live in," the genie answered. Jasmine smiled. "I have an idea," she said. "Follow me." The princess led the group inside the palace and back to the pillar room. "Take a look at this," Jasmine said. The genie looked around. He said. "Not too big, not too small, not too bright, not too dim. Definitely not a magical lamp. That's good. Not too creepy, not too plain." He paused. "Hey, Jasmine. Ow. This room is perfect." "Jasmine," Aladdin whispered, "isn't this the first room we showed him?" Jasmine whispered back. "It most certainly is." "We finally found it," the genie cried, flinging himself into a large cozy pillow. He smiled wildly. "It's good to be home." The end. Day 4. Mulan and the Lucky Cricket. It was a peaceful night. Snow lay tucked like a quilt around the house, but inside it was warm and cozy. Mulan's father, Fa Zhu, sat reading at the table while her mother, Fa Li, sewed in the candlelight. Mulan chatted quietly with Grandmother Fa as they washed the dishes. With a crash, Grandmother Fa dropped the bowl she was washing. The noise made Mulan's father jerk his scroll into the candle flame, and her mother pricked her finger in fright. "Such bad luck," Grandmother Fa explained. "What bad luck?" said Fa Zhu, stamping out the corner of the scroll. "Ooh, bad luck!" cried Fa Li, as the same thing, holding her hand. 3 incidents of bad luck, said Grandma Fa. "Something's not right." Mulan looked up. "Oh no," she cried. "Our lucky cricket is not in his cage." "Where could he have gone?" Grandma Fa said, looking around the room. Mulan pushed open the window. In the snow was a trail of tiny footprints. "I have to go find him," said Mulan. "Cricket will never be survive in this cold." Drawing her warmest cloak around her, Mulan ran to the ancestors' temple. "Quick, Mushu," Mulan called. "We have to find Cricky. He might be lost in the snow." "Lady, are you crazy?" Mushu asked, curling up in his pedestal. "It's cold out there." "But we're his friends," Mulan protested. "Friends?" said Mushu. "What has that cricket ever done for me?" "I can think of many things," Mulan replied. Muttering under his breath, Mushu reluctantly followed Mulan out into the snow. The friends carefully tracked the tiny trail. Just then, Mushu sneezed. "Mushu," Mulan gasped, "you've melted the snow. We've lost Cricky's trail." "Well, excuse me," said Mushu. "I can't help being a fire-breathing dragon. It was just bad luck." "It's okay, Mushu," said Mulan. "I wonder why Cricky would be out in the snow." "The little cricket hates the cold as much as I do," said Mushu, softening. Mulan nodded. "If he's out in this weather, it must be to help someone," Mushu shouted. As they continued their search for the trail, dark clouds blew over the moon, making it harder to see. Mushu shivered. "Oh, what bad luck," Mushu said. "Now we have no chance of finding Cricky's tracks." Mushu tipped back his head, carefully not to melt the snow. He breathed a little fire so Mulan could find the trail again. "Look, we're in luck," Mulan cried. "I see Cricky's tracks." But after a little while, the trail seemed to suddenly disappear. "How strange," said Mulan. "Look," Mushu called. "Remember how our jumpy little friend likes to jump?" Mulan glanced up and spotted a tiny trail landing in the snow-covered cave. Quickly, Mulan and Mushu began scraping away the top of the snowbank, which had fallen branch. They called out for their friend. "Cricky!" From inside the cave came the faintest chirp, a weak voice calling, "Help!" Peering through the hole they'd made, Mulan and Mushu saw Cricky and Lily, one of the little village girls, alone and shivering. They scrambled inside and hurried to their friends. "What are you doing here?" Mulan said. "I was gathering firewood outside when I slipped in the cave and a big pile of snow fell and blocked the entrance," Lily replied. "I kept calling for help, but nobody heard me." "Let's warm up for a minute, and then we'll head home," Mulan said as Mushu started a fire. "How did you know Lily was here, Cricky?" Mulan said. Cricky shook his hind legs and wiggled his bottom. Mulan nodded in understanding. "Don't listen to him," Mushu said, holding up his friend. "I know the real reason we're all safe and sound. There can be no explanation. Cricky is absolutely one lucky cricket." The end. Day 5. Aurora and the Diamond Crown. Aurora awoke one sunny morning in the most cheerful of moods. After all, it was her 17th birthday, and she could not wait to see what wonderful surprises were in store. Luckily, she did not have to wait too long. As soon as she had got dressed, her mother, the Queen, came in. "Happy birthday, darling," said the Queen. Aurora was quick to notice that her mother was wearing a crown Aurora had never seen before. Glimmering at the center was a large pink heart-shaped diamond, trimmed all round with smaller sparkling diamonds. "Mother," she cried, "what a beautiful crown! Is it new?" "Actually," replied the Queen, "it's quite old, and it's the reason I've come to you so early on this very special day." With that, the Queen took Aurora by the hand and led her through the castle to a great portrait on the wall. It was filled with stately paintings, each of the lovely young princesses wearing a crown, just like the queen was wearing. "Why, mother," exclaimed Aurora, pointing at the nearest portrait. "Is that you?" "Indeed it is," replied the queen. "It was painted on my 17th birthday. You see, Aurora, it's a tradition in our kingdom that on a princess's 17th birthday, this crown will pass down to her by her mother. It will be worn until the day the princess herself becomes queen." "Oh, mother," Aurora gasped. "Is that crown truly to be mine?" "Well," her mother said with a smile, "I certainly hope so. But according to tradition, you must first earn it." "How?" asked Aurora. "By answering 3 riddles," her mother explained. Just then 3 fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, flew in. "Happy birthday, princess," said Merryweather. We're here to give you your clothes." Then the queen kissed Aurora. "Think hard, my dear, and good luck." With a wave of their magic wands, the fairies made themselves bigger and transported themselves to Aurora out onto the castle grounds. Then Flora stepped up and recited the first riddle. "To the eyes, it's a threat. To the nose, a delight. But beware, to the hand, it can be quite a fright. Though few think to taste it, it's the sweetest still shows." To this first riddle, the answer is said Aurora when Flora was done. "Oh, I know," said Merryweather. "Of course you know," scolded Fauna. "It's Aurora who has to guess." "Do you know what the answer is, dearie?" asked Flora. "Let's see," said Aurora. "To the eye, it's a treat, so it's pretty. To the nose, a delight, so it smells good. To the hand, quite a fright, so it must hurt, like a thorn on a rose. Isn't it? Isn't it?" She hurried off to the rose garden, where she picked the biggest, most fragrant rose she could find. "Very good," exclaimed Fauna. "And now for the second one. Some paint it, some steal it, some blow it away. Some do it several times in a day. Some who are shy might blush getting this. On their hand or on their cheek, can you guess? It's Well," said Aurora, thinking, "if someone can plant it, it might be perhaps a flower or a dandelion, perhaps. You can blow them away too. Of course, we don't have any of those in the garden. But what can you get on your hand or on your cheek?" she wondered aloud, as she gazed at her reflection in the garden pool. "I know," Aurora cried suddenly. "It's a kiss, isn't it?" "Of course it is." And as if to prove it, she planted a kiss on each of the fairies, causing them to blush. "Honestly," said Flora, "you're figuring out the answers faster than any princesses yet." "Now it's my turn," explained Merryweather. "Are you ready, Aurora?" "I think so," she replied. "Ahem." Merryweather cleared her throat. "What only gets stronger the longer it lives? What pays you back tenfold the more that you give? Some say it's blind, some say it's true. Some just say simply, 'I feel this for you.'" Merryweather giggled. "Silly me, I almost said the answer." Let's see," said Aurora. "It might be a tree that gets stronger and longer it lives. And I suppose you could say that a tree is blind, but so are bats." Aurora thought and thought. She was still thinking when Prince Philip walked by, leading his horse Samson. "Happy birthday, my love," he said with a big smile, and instantly Aurora knew what the answer to the riddle was. Happily, Aurora hurried back to the castle and up to the mother's sewing room. "I've solved the 3 riddles," she announced. She took the pink rose from her hair and handed it to her mother. Then Aurora gave her a kiss on the cheek. "Very good," declared the queen. "And the answer to the 3rd riddle?" "That's when the fairies brought in Prince Philip." "It's love," said Aurora. "Of course." No sooner had Aurora said the words than the queen took the crown from her head and proudly placed it on Aurora's. And then, some say, the heart-shaped diamond shone even brighter than before. That very afternoon, Aurora had her portrait painted, just as all the clever princesses had come before her had. And that night there was a grand birthday ball held in the castle in Aurora's honor. "Happy birthday, Aurora, my darling," her mother warmly told her, "and may you have many, many more." The end. Day 6. Jasmine's Snowy Day. It was very hot in Agrabah. In fact, it was the 10th hot day in a row, and Jasmine was sick of it. Wouldn't it be nice to go somewhere different and new, somewhere cool? The princess asked her pet tiger Raja. Just then, Aladdin and his monkey Abu flew towards Jasmine's balcony on Aladdin's magic carpet. They overheard the princess talking. "Oh, Raja, I wish I could travel to another world," said Jasmine. "A world with snow." Aladdin decided to go to the genie for help. "The princess is unhappy, Genie," he said. "Is there any way you could make it snow here? I think that would make her feel a lot better." "I'm on the job, Al," said the genie, "and with a puff and a puff and a ta-da, I'll bring snow to Agrabah." When Jasmine woke up the next morning, she could not believe her eyes. Agrabah was a winter wonderland. Glistening snow covered the city, and it was actually cool outside. Suddenly, Aladdin, Abu, and the genie appeared. "Do you like my surprise?" Aladdin said. "I asked the genie to cover Agrabah in snow for a day." "Oh, it's wonderful," Jasmine cried. "The city is like a whole new world." "Told you she'd like it, Al," the genie said proudly. "You were right, Genie," Aladdin said. He turned to Jasmine. "Want to go for a ride?" Jasmine jumped onto the magic carpet, ready for her snowy adventure. "Welcome aboard the SS Snowbound," said the genie. "We hope you enjoy your trip." Abu held on tight as the magic carpet took off across the snowy skies. First, Aladdin and Jasmine decided to go sledding. "Woohoo!" Aladdin yelled as they slid down the side of the tallest snow-covered hill. "Hey, kids, look out!" shouted the genie. "A lean, mean skiing machine is about to pass you." Then he whizzed by on his skis. Next, Jasmine and Aladdin built a castle out of snow. A few minutes later, the genie and the princess began to whisper to one another. All of a sudden, they started throwing snowballs at Aladdin. "Heads up, Abu!" Aladdin warned as he began throwing snowballs back. "Oh!" Jasmine exclaimed as some snow hit her on the neck. But she laughed in delight as her next snowball hit Aladdin right on the elbow. At first, Abu hopped onto Aladdin's head in fear, but then he saw how much fun everyone was having and began to throw tiny snowballs of his own. He even hit the genie on the nose. A little later, Aladdin and Abu built a giant snowman. "If I didn't know any better, I'd say that was Genie," the genie said. "A handsome guy, but he looked better in blue." Nearby, Jasmine flopped onto the ground and began to make a snow angel. When she got up, Jasmine noticed she was getting cold. "Brrr," she said. "I almost wish for the heat of the desert again." "Well, the sun is starting to set," Aladdin said. "Maybe we should go back." They hopped on the magic carpet and flew back to the palace. "Hey, Princess," the genie said when they landed. "This ought to warm you up." In a blink of an eye, he had made a fire and was toasting marshmallows over it. "What a splendid day," Jasmine explained as she and Aladdin sat by the fire. "It was just what I needed. Thank you so much." "Anything to make you happy," Aladdin replied. Everyone enjoyed a few more minutes by the fire. Their wonderful snowy day had come to an end. Jasmine and Aladdin both agreed that it was always helpful to have a genie around to make their dreams come true. The end. Day 7. Ghosts of Christmas Past. It should have been a joyous time. Christmas was coming. Rapunzel's very first Christmas since returning home to the castle. For the past 16 years of her life, she had spent every Christmas locked away in Mother Gothel's tower. The castle halls were decked with boughs of holly. The butlers had chosen the royal Christmas tree. Everyone was doing their best to spread Christmas cheer. Even the grumpiest townfolk were merry. But in the royal family, one person was not ready for a happy Christmas. "No way, said Rapunzel. "I refuse to celebrate Christmas." "What?" cried Flynn. "Why don't you want to celebrate the most wonderful time of year?" Rapunzel looked shocked. "Wonderful," she said. "I think you mean terrifying." Flynn was confused until Rapunzel shared the memories of Christmas spent in Mother Gothel's tower. "You know how it is," Rapunzel said. "There's all of that eerie Christmas music. Mother Gothel sang it non-stop at Christmas time. I hate chanting and growling." That doesn't sound like any Christmas music Flynn had ever heard. "Okay," he said, trying not to smile. "What else?" "Mother Gothel always told me the tale of Nicholas, the ghostly Christmas elf, how he creeps into children's rooms on Christmas Eve and steals them away. It kept me up at bedtime." Rapunzel sighed and shrugged. "But I guess all kids have trouble sleeping on Christmas Eve. Did you?" "Actually, no," Flynn said. "I couldn't wait to go to bed and wake up on Christmas morning. You know, that's not what Christmas is like at all." From everything Rapunzel was telling him, he could see that Mother Gothel had gone out of her way to ruin Christmas for Rapunzel. She didn't want Rapunzel to leave the tower, Flynn thought sadly, ever. Well, he could do something to change things now. He led Rapunzel outside the castle. "Just look around and listen," he said. "Does this seem spooky to you?" They passed a group of children singing Christmas carols. It was like no Christmas music Rapunzel had ever heard before. A small boy raced over to Rapunzel. He held out a package wrapped with a golden bow. "Merry Christmas, Princess Rapunzel," he said. "Trick package, duck!" Rapunzel cried, diving for cover behind a low stone wall. She peeked out wearily from the hiding place. Flynn and the children stared at her, who ran away from a Christmas present. "It's not a trick," Flynn said gently. "It's a gift." He opened the box. Inside was a hand-woven crown of evergreens. Slowly Rapunzel stepped out from behind the wall and took the crown from Flynn. She placed it on her head. "A real Christmas gift?" she asked, as if she'd never heard of such a thing. "Not an exploding trick package?" She knelt by a little boy, took his hands in hers. "Thank you." Rapunzel and Flynn wandered further into town and came across the townsfolk decorating an enormous Christmas tree. Rapunzel pointed towards the top of the tree. "You need a lot more charms there," she said, "if you want to scare off the ghostly Christmas elf." She picked up one of the ornaments. "I'm not sure those charms are anywhere near scary enough." "They're not charms," Flynn explained. "They're ornaments for decoration." Rapunzel frowned. "Oh, well then, how do you keep the Christmas elf away?" Flynn couldn't stop laughing. They went back inside the castle, where Flynn found some books about the real St. Nicholas. See, St. Nicholas isn't a ghostly Christmas elf. He's a jolly old fellow who travels far and wide on Christmas Eve, bringing gifts to all boys and girls. Flynn showed Rapunzel drawings of smiley bearded men carrying a sack full of presents. Definitely no kidnapping. Rapunzel and her chameleon Pascal looked at each other. To think of all those Christmas Eves they spent huddled together, too afraid to sleep. "You mean children have trouble sleeping on Christmas Eve because they are excited?" she asked. Flynn nodded. Most children can't wait for Christmas. He watched Rapunzel take it all in. So now that you know what the festive time is really like, do you think you might be interested in celebrating it this year? For real? For the first time? Rapunzel's face lit up. Yes, she replied, and she sprang into action. For the next few weeks, Rapunzel lived and breathed Christmas, enjoying everything that the season had to offer, everything she had missed out on while living in the tower. In the castle kitchen, she helped bake dozens and dozens of crumbly Christmas cookies. She learned every word of every Christmas carol she had never heard before. She decked every undecked part of the halls with garlands and ribbons, and for the first time she made beautiful, not spooky Christmas ornaments. Finally, she gathered paper, ribbons, gift tags, and carefully wrapped them handmade presents for each member of her family. She could hardly wait until Christmas to see them opened. By the time Christmas Eve arrived, Rapunzel was exhausted, but very happy. Rapunzel's father, the king, proposed a toast. For years our hearts have felt entirely whole at this time of year. He paused. An important part of them was missing. He smiled at Rapunzel. The queen raised her golden goblet and added her own words to the toast. But now, for the first time since you were born, Rapunzel, this Christmas is a joyous one for all of us. Rapunzel couldn't agree more. Surrounded by her loving family in front of a crackling fire, she could not imagine a better Christmas. Rapunzel sighed happily and flopped down next to Finn on a cozy sofa. Thank you for all of this, she said. I should really be thanking you, Flynn admitted. You know this is my first Christmas with a real family. All those years I spent growing up in an orphanage, I knew what Christmas was supposed to be like, but it somehow never felt that merry, until now. Flynn and Rapunzel sat together in front of the fire, but before long Rapunzel fell asleep. It had been a wonderful Christmas Eve, and there would be many more like it for years to come. The end. Day 8. Tiana's Winter Blues. It was Tiana's favorite time of year, winter in New Orleans. The holidays were over, but the city still sparkled and the streets were dotted with revelers. Mardi Gras was only a month away. The longer winter nights were good for Tiana's palace. The restaurant was always cozy and bright and packed with friends enjoying warm food and cool sounds of Louis' band. But one day a chill filled the usually balmy air. Tiana hoped the winter would warm up again soon, but each day seemed colder than the last. Even the lights seemed dimmed by the cold. Out in the bayou, Louis the alligator was hibernating underwater, and the fireflies were tucked inside a tree. Naveen had never felt this sort of cold. He missed his warm, sunny Maldonia. Soon, Tiana's palace was feeling the chill. The restaurant's ancient heater wasn't working, if it ever worked at all. The regulars had stopped coming, and Tiana's friend Charlotte had left town in search for warmer weather. Tiana had the winter blues, but she wouldn't let this stop her. She was determined to use the restaurant to warm up the dreary weather, just as soon as she had warmed up a little herself. Let's have a night of dancing, suggested Naveen. That will warm everyone up. But without Louis and the band, there was no music. Tiana decided a new winter menu would chase away the cold, so she chopped and sautéed and cooked and baked. The next evening, Tiana was gazing out the front door, waiting for customers, when something flashed in the light of the street lamp. The fireflies are back, she explained. But no, that couldn't be. It was far too cold. Then Tiana saw another flash, and then another, and another. Tiana ran out into the street. Snowflakes, she shouted. She caught one on her tongue. It was soft and cold. The snowflakes reminded her of the powdered sugar she baked with. Powdered sugar, Tiana mumbled. That's it. Tiana rushed back inside the restaurant and started to bake. She threw open the windows, and soon the cold winter evening filled with the sweet, warm scent of her baking. Tiana made batches and batches of her famous beignets and sprinkled the warm golden squares of fried dough with extra coatings of powdered sugar. It looked just like snow. The smell made it all the way to the bayou. Tiana added beignets and piped hot chocolate to every table. Sure, the guests were on their way. It wasn't long before the streets began to fill with people, slowly emerging from their warm homes to see the rare sight, snowfall in New Orleans. Restaurant regulars, as well as new and old friends, poured into Tiana's palace. Tia, Lottie, best friends were reunited. Louis and his band, the Firefly Five, weren't far behind. Soon beautiful bluesy songs filled the room. Even the fireflies arrived. The restaurant was cozy and bright and packed again when someone shouted, "Look!" Outside, snow had fallen heavily. Tiana invited everyone into a southern winter wonderland. Tiana's favorite time of year had never been better, and she no longer had the winter blues. The end. Ariel and the Aquamarine Jewel. It was a glorious summer morning, a perfect day, thought Ariel, for a walk along the shore. Happily, she set out, and almost before she knew it, she walked further down the beach than she ever had before. In fact, Ariel was just about to turn back when her foot struck something hard in the sand. "Oh, my toes!" she cried, still not entirely used to the feel of human feet. She looked down, surprised to see something gleaming in the sand. She bent down, dug it out, and pulled off a layer of seaweed. She slowly turned the shiny object over in her hand. "What you got there, Princess?" her friend Scuttle asked. "Looks like a piece of that sweet gobbledygook you humans like so much. Yum! Can I have a taste?" And with that, he stuck out his tongue and licked it. "Bleh!" he exclaimed. "Maybe not." Ariel laughed. "I think you mean sweets," she told her friend. "And no, I don't think it's that. I think it's a jewel," she cried. But where had it come from? Ariel wondered. She'd never seen anything like it in the kingdom before. Perhaps it had come from the sea, and if it had come from the sea, she knew who to ask about it. "Scuttle," she said quickly, "please go find Sebastian. Ask him to get my father right away." A short while later, Ariel's father, King Triton, emerged from beneath the waves. "Ariel, my dear," declared the king, "Sebastian said you called." "Yes, father," said Ariel. "You see, I found this lovely jewel and—" King Triton looked astonished. "Where in the sea did you find it?" he asked. "Actually," said Ariel, "I found it on the shore. Do you know where it came from?" The king looked at her sadly. "Indeed, my dear, I do." "Oh, tell me, father," begged Ariel. "In fact," said the king, "I can show you, but I'll have to change you back into a mermaid to do it." And with a blast from his mighty trident, that's exactly what he did. Gripping the ocean blue jewel, Ariel dived into the sea after her father. She'd nearly forgotten how wonderful it felt to swim freely through the water. By the time she and King Triton reached the gates of Atlantica, she felt very comfortable. It was as if she'd never left. "Why, father?" Ariel cried excitedly. "This jewel is from Atlantica?" Ariel's excitement faded, however, when her father led her to his throne room. "Why, it looks like a wave's been through here," she said with a gasp. "And Atlantica's treasure, it's all gone." "Alas, King Triton said softly, "it's true. Can you believe it? For 1,000 years this chest was kept our kingdom's treasures safe. And then one giant wave comes and washes it all away. The Aquamarine is just one of dozens of gems that were lost to us, I'm afraid. And though we've been searching ever since, it's still the only one that's been found." "Don't worry, Father," said Ariel. "I'll help you find the other jewels. After all, I'm a pretty good treasure hunter, if I do say so myself." And with a swish of her tail, she was off. First, Ariel decided to search the old sunken ship, a place she still knew like the back of her fin. In and out of the galleon she swam, until she found close to a dozen of the missing jewels. Next, it was off to the coral reef, where it was easy to understand how jewels could be overlooked among all the deep crevices and bright colours. But with a little help from Flounder and some other dear old friends, yet more lost jewels were found. In fact, by the time the tide turned, Atlantica's treasure chest was full once more. "Ariel, on behalf of Atlantica, I thank you," said King Triton. "And I'm just glad all the jewels are back where they belong," she replied. The king thought for a moment. "Actually," he said thoughtfully, "I'm not sure they were all where they belong quite yet." And he reached into the treasure chest and pulled out the first and by far the most beautiful aquamarine that Ariel had found. Then, giving Ariel a kiss on top of her head, King Triton placed the jewel around her neck. Then it was time, they both knew, for Ariel to swim back to her own castle and become a human princess once again. "Darling," exclaimed Eric, when she finally returned to the palace, "it's almost dark. Where have you been?" And she told Eric about her day, about the lost jewels, the tidal wave, and how wonderful it felt to swim home with her father and to help Atlantica. That night, Ariel gazed out over the sea as she touched the aquamarine jewel hanging around her neck. She knew that her father and her family were never far away. Even so, it felt good to have a piece of Atlantica with her always. The End. Day 10. A Christmas to Remember. Once upon a time, a princess named Snow White had to run away from her evil stepmother's castle. She happened upon a cozy cottage in the woods that belonged to 7 friends. When the friends heard that Snow White's life was in danger, they insisted she stay with them. After several months, they thought of each other as family. One December morning, Snow White was out feeding the birds and her forest friends. Doc sat down with the others. "Christmas is coming," he said. "What do you say we give Snow White a gifty nift or a nifty gift? We need to show our appreciation for all she has done for us," said Happy. Why not? She deserves something, I guess," said Grumpy. Sleepy said, "She should use a new quilt for her bed." "How about lace handkerchiefs?" suggested Sneezy. "I have an idea," said Bashful, blushing. "Why not give her something from our minds? Something for her to remember us by." "Remember us? She's not going anywhere," said Grumpy. "Is she?" "Let's hope not," Sleepy yawned. "If we work extra hard," said Doc, "we could find the perfect diamond. We could make her a crown," said Happy. "A crown fit for a princess." "Snow White is a princess," Bashful reminded him. The next day, the 7 friends busied themselves at the mine. They wanted to be sure they found the perfect gift. In the cottage, Snow White got ready for Christmas too. First, she made a tray of special cookies, cutting them into shapes of bells, stars, and Christmas trees. While the cookies baked, she went into the forest to cut down a pine tree. She pulled it home on a sledge, gathering red berries and holly leaves along the way. When Snow White returned to the little cottage, it was filled with the smell of warm cinnamon and sugar. The smell was so delicious, it made Snow White quite hungry. But instead of nibbling on the freshly baked cookies, she laced them with ribbons and hung them on the little pine tree. She draped strings of berries on the branches, singing carols all the while. Snow White hoped the 7 friends liked the holiday treats and decorations. By the time she had finished decking the cottage with holly and mistletoe, Snow White was tired. She sat down by the fire, and soon she was fast asleep. When the 7 friends came home and saw the tree, they danced and shouted with delight. They loved the smell of the cookies and could hardly wait to have a taste. Snow White awoke to the sound of their cheers and smiles. "Merry Christmas," she exclaimed. "I'm so happy you like my surprise." "It's a beautiful surprise," said Happy. "We have a little surprise for you too," Doc added. He took a small package wrapped in brown paper out of his cloak and placed it under the tree. "No squeaking or peeking," he said. "Please wait until Christmas Eve," Bashful said shyly. Snow White was surprised. "You didn't have to give me a present," she said. "You've already been so kind to me." On Christmas Eve, Snow White cooked a feast of roast fowl and delicious cake. All night she kept looking at the package beneath the tree. Her stepmother, the evil queen, had never given her anything. This was her very first Christmas present. At last, the meal was finished, and the 7 friends had washed all the dishes. Doc handed Snow White the small package. When she opened it, Snow White gasped with delight. "Why, this is lovely. But how did you ever—" "We made it," said Happy proudly. Snow White went to the mirror and put on the crown. "Oh, thank you," she said. "This is wonderful, and it's even more precious because you put your heart into it." "Shucks, it wasn't much," said Bashful. "But it is," Snow White cried. "You've made my first Christmas very memorable." Snow White wore the splendid crown all through the festive season. When she wrapped it carefully away, she wanted to keep her beautiful gift ready for the next time she wore it. The end. Day 11. The Misadventures of Heihei. Maui and Moana's canoe hit the shore, and Maui sprinkled a handful of birdseed in front of Heihei. He nudged the clueless rooster to make him start pecking. Then the demigod prepared to climb. He needed his magical fish hook back. He knew Tamatoa, a giant crab, had it. "He lives up there?" Moana asked, gazing up at the rocks before them. Maui chuckled. "Oh, that's just the entrance to Lalotii." Moana gasped. "We're going to the realm of monsters?" "We?" Maui said, mocking Moana. "No, me. You're going to stay here with the other chicken. Baka!" He began scaling the massive rock, hopping from ledge to ledge. Moana frowned. There's no way she's staying behind with Heihei. She took a deep breath and started climbing after Maui. Heihei didn't even notice she was gone, as he was aimlessly walking around the deck of the canoe with a tap, tap, tap. Not even one peck he made landed on the seed. A lizard approached, eyeing the kernels of food. It looked Heihei up and down. The lizard moved closer and began to feast on the seed. Heihei didn't even notice. He continued to peck at the deck until he pecked in the wrong spot, and the lizard's tail was caught on his beak. But the lizard didn't care. He lost his tail all the time. He took one last bite of the seed and scurried off. leaving his tail dangling from Heihei's beak like a worm. A hungry seabird swooped down and grabbed the tail. It flew into the clouds, taking the tail and Heihei with it. The bird shook the tail this way and that until Heihei fell off. A gust of wind threw his wings wide open, and he began to glide. Heihei sailed across the sky, the breeze whipping through his feathers and wobbling his waddle. Then Heihei crashed into the rock spire and fell into a narrow ledge. He clucked and pecked at some soft green moss. Up above Heihei, Maui prepared to open the entrance to Lalotii. He jumped up and landed with a giant thud. The spire trembled as the entrance cracked open, and Heihei was bounced off the ledge. Down he went until his foot caught on a tiny branch. He hung there for a moment, then snap! The branch broke. Heihei tumbled down, 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 until he landed on the shore below. Big square rocks jetted out of the water, piled up on top of each other like little mountains. Heihei walked up the rocks. He walked down the rocks. Up and down the rocks went on, and Heihei continued walking. He wandered into a shallow water and continued to walk, straight into a kelp forest. The long seaweeds sprouted around Heihei's body, wrapping him up like a present. As Heihei walked, he collected more and more kelp. He walked slower and slower, dragging the tangled mess he kept along. He hobbled up a plank of driftwood and went up, 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 and up some more. When Heihei neared the end of the plank, he tilted down, 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 closer to the crashing waves of the ocean. A piece of the kelp was wrapped around Heihei, got stuck in a crack. So instead of walking into the ocean, Heihei marched in place. Below the ocean, Moana searched for Maui in Lalotai, where monsters lurked around every corner. She hid from a group of 8-eyed oversized bats, but a 4-armed monster approached and moved towards her. She was cornered. As Moana tried to come up with a plan, a powerful geyser blasted the monster straight up and out of Lalotai. The 4-armed monster landed on the opposite side of the plank Heihei was marching on. Flop! In a flash, the piece of kelp broke off, and Heihei shot up towards the sun. Before the 4-armed monster could figure out where he was, he looked up to see a terrifying sight. A kelp monster coming straight for him. Scared for his life, the 4-armed monster bolted across the ocean. But no matter how fast he ran, the scary creature was right behind him. When he spotted an island covered in boulders, he leapt over the biggest one, trying to get away from the frightening beast. Heihei's seaweed wrapped around the boulder before snapping like a slingshot and flinging Heihei off into the distance. Heihei let out a loud scream as he sailed across the sky. The 4-armed monster hid in a cave, vowing never to leave. Heihei landed on top of a slender tree and slid a small coconut. Tap, tap. He pecked at it again and again until he picked up the whole coconut in his beak and swallowed it. As soon as it slid down Heihei's throat, he knocked him off balance and he fell out of the tree. So Heihei coughed up the coconut, gave it a peck, and walked off the island into the water. The ocean had grown tired of his nonsense. Sploosh! It grabbed him and zoomed him back to Moana's canoe. At the same time, with Maui's magical fish hook in hand, Maui and Moana rode an exploding geyser out of Lalotai. Maui and Moana landed safely on the rocky shore, and while Maui was trying to figure out why he couldn't use his hook to shapeshift, Heihei continued walking, clucking and pecking at the boat like he had never left. The end. Day 12. The Winter Journey. At autumn's end, the wind blew colder, and the last leaves fell from the trees. The crops were harvested and the feasting was over. For Pocahontas and her village, the time had come to travel to their winter camp. Pocahontas loved her home by the river, but she always looked forward to this trip. The journey meant new adventures and a new place to explore. Best of all, many different villages from the Powhatan Nation gathered at the winter camp to work together during the cold months. As they walked, Pocahontas stepped off the trail and bent down to examine the cold ground. She saw fresh tracks from a opossum, a family of deer, that even a bobcat. Some animals were still out and about in the winter. Moments later, snow began to fall. Pocahontas tipped her head back, enjoying the feeling of snow on her face. "We are close," called Pocahontas's father, the chief of the Powhatan. Pocahontas' village was the first to arrive at the campsite. They hurried to unpack and set up their winter home. Some villagers made shelters by tying woven mats onto wooden frames. Others started fires for cooking and warmth. A group of hunters prepared to find food for the night's dinner. Pocahontas and some others set out to gather firewood. "Let's bring back as much dry wood as we can before dark," said Pocahontas. Pocahontas strayed further from the camp to search for wood. She loved the quiet of the winter forest and the soft sound of the wind. Wait, she thought. What was that noise? Pocahontas put down her firewood and listened carefully. There it was again. It sounded like crying. She climbed the nearest tree, but couldn't see anything at first. Then she looked down and gasped. A little lost deer was wandering alone in the woods. He was too young to survive on his own and needed to get back to his mother quickly. Pocahontas climbed down from the tree. Her moccasins crunched softly on the snow. The fawn looked up and froze. Pocahontas held her hand out. "It's all right, little one," she said. "I'm here to help." Slowly, Pocahontas reached into her pouch and pulled out some berries. She held them flat on her palm so the breeze would carry the scent to the fawn. The little deer picked up his ears with interest, and Pocahontas gently tossed the berries to him. The fawn happily ate his snack. Pocahontas crept around him until she could see the tracks in the snow. She had to take the fawn back the way he had come. She dropped a berry on his path, following the tracks a little further. She dropped more berries, and the fawn went hurrying after her. Soon they came to the bank of a creek. Scanning the icy mud at the water's edge, Pocahontas saw two sets of tracks. One belonged to the fawn, and the other she thought might belong to his mother. The mother's tracks continued on the opposite bank. Pocahontas lightly ran across a path of rocks in the creek. Then she put a berry down on the far bank. The fawn walked closer and reached out a hoof, then pulled back. He was afraid of the rushing water. Patiently, Pocahontas piled more and more berries on the bank. The fawn gazed at them hungrily. Finally, he charged right into the shallow creek. Splash! In a few bounds, he was across and splashing onto the bank. Dripping icy water, he looked up at Pocahontas and shook himself happily. Pocahontas and the fawn followed his mother's trail to the edge of the clearing. Peering ahead, Pocahontas saw a doe pacing back and forth. "Is that?" she started to ask, but the fawn was already galloping across the clearing to his mother. The family was together again. Pocahontas watched, smiling and peaceful. A branch snapped behind her. Pocahontas whirled round. "There you are," Pocahontas' best friend Nakoma called her. "You've been gone a while, so I came looking for you." "Look," Pocahontas said, pointing. The little one was lost. "How sweet," Nakoma said. "But we should get back. It's almost dark." Pocahontas brightened. Has anyone else arrived? 3 more villages. Probably more by now, replied Nakama. Pocahontas nodded. That's the beauty of winter. It brings us together. Back at the camp, people from many different Powhatan villages were gathered. Everyone seemed to be talking at once. There was so much to catch up on, and so many stories to tell. Pocahontas snuggled under a blanket by a fire and listened. She was happy to be surrounded by the love and laughter of her family. Seasons changed and camps moved, but no matter where she rested her head, the land and the families Pocahontas found there always felt like home. The end. Day 13. Belle and the Castle Puppy. Belle was strolling through the castle garden one chilly spring day when she heard a whimpering sound. A shivering puppy was huddled by the castle gates. "Oh, you poor thing," Belle cried. "Let's get you warmed up and fed." She cradled the puppy in her red cloak and hurried to the castle kitchen. The enchanted objects laughed when the puppy splashed in his bath. The dinner forks combed the fur while he gobbled a bowl of warm stew. Chip and his brothers and sisters giggled when the puppy drank water from them. "He's so cute. I hope we can keep him," Chip said. But one enchanted object didn't join the fun. The Ottoman watched the puppy. He remembered when he had been a real dog. Suddenly he wanted some attention too. With a funny little grrr, he thumbed around the kitchen, trying to act like the puppy, but no one noticed. Just then the puppy bounded to the door, barking angrily. "Do you want to go out to play?" Belle asked, opening the door. As Belle and the others followed the puppy outside, they didn't see the Ottoman slink out and wander off alone. They laughed as Belle threw sticks for the puppy to fetch. Just then the beast walked up the path, clutching one of his precious rose bushes. "Someone has dug up my roses," he explained. Then the beast saw the puppy. "Did that dog dig up my garden? Get rid of him, now." "I can't leave him in the woods," Belle argued. "He needs a home." "He's not getting one here," the beast roared, as he stomped away into the forest. Belle knew the beast loved his roses, but what about the puppy? Just then the Ottoman ran past Belle and the others. His legs were muddy. "Ottoman dug up the garden," Belle explained. "But why?" Lumiere asked. As Belle watched the Ottoman racing after the beast, she suddenly understood. "Oh, poor Ottoman," Belle said. "He just wanted some attention too." Suddenly the puppy raced after the Ottoman, barking playfully. Belle tried to call to them, but the Ottoman and the puppy disappeared among the trees. "They'll get lost," Belle exclaimed. "I have to bring them back safely." "But it's getting dark," Mrs. Potts protested. Belle looked at the long shadows creeping through the forest and shivered. Clutching her red cloak tightly, she took a deep breath and started towards the trees. "Wait," Lumiere called. "I'll come and light your way." "Thank you," Belle said, and she held Lumiere up high. "I'm glad you're coming." "Me too, I think," replied Lumiere. But his flames flickered nervously. "Puppy! Ottoman!" Belle called as she and Lumiere searched. Something rustled in the bushes. Yellow eyes gleamed at them. "What is that?" Lumiere whispered. "I hope it's just squirrels," Belle answered. "They might be very big squirrels with very big eyes," Lumiere replied. Belle picked up a large stick. Then she and Lumiere walked on, calling and calling. Suddenly, they heard furious barking and snarling nearby. Belle ran towards the sound and stumbled onto the clearing. The Ottoman and puppy stood below an enormous tree. Snarling wolves circled them, but the puppy was growling and snapping back. "He's protecting Ottoman," Lumiere explained. He's too small to stop those wolves for long, Belle answered. He needs help. Quickly, Belle put Lumiere on the ground and lit the stick with his flames. Turning swiftly, Belle ran at the wolves, swinging the blazing stick at them like a flaming sword. Get away, she shouted. Snarling angrily, the wolves backed away from the fire. Belle raced between them, the Ottoman and the puppy. Just then, Belle tripped on a root. The torch flew from her hands. Oh no, she gasped. The torch hit the ground and rolled out of her reach. The growling wolves crept towards her. Barking furiously, the puppy raced to the flaming stick. He snatched one end in his teeth and darted among the wolves. As the wolves backed away, the Ottoman ran in front of Belle, yipping at her to follow. The puppy's clearing the way, Lumiere shouted to Belle. Follow, Ottoman. Suddenly, the beast crashed into the clearing. The wolves scattered in fear. The danger had passed, but the puppy's nose and ears were singing and sore. He and the Ottoman tried to save me, Belle said. They were brave little fellows, the beast answered, cradling the puppy in one arm and the Ottoman in the other. He led Belle back to the castle. Once the puppy was tended to, everyone settled by the fireside. Belle watched the beast stroke the Ottoman and feed the puppy biscuits. The gentle smile on his face made her happy. May the puppy stay until I find him a home, she asked. The beast cleared his throat. His home is here with us, he answered gruffly. The next evening, as Belle and Beast waltzed in the ballroom, the puppy and Ottoman kept guard proudly at the door. They each wore shiny new badges that showed they were both protectors of the castle. The end. Day 14. Aurora's Homemade Holiday. One snowy December day, Princess Aurora and Prince Philip went for a stroll. As they walked, Philip noticed that the princess was unusually quiet. Is something the matter? He asked. My aunts and I used to love Christmas time, she said. The three fairies, Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather, had raised Aurora in secret, and she still thought of them as her aunts. Let's invite them for the holidays, Philip said. What a splendid idea, Aurora cried. The next morning, Prince Philip sent an invitation to Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather. Then he set off for a short trip to attend to some royal duties. Aurora was sad to see Philip go, but she tried to look on the bright side. Now her special Christmas preparations would be a surprise for Philip when he returned. Soon the good fairies arrived. Princess Aurora had a special request for them. You want a Christmas exactly like the ones we shared at the cottage? Flora asked. That means we can't use magic. You better take our one so we're not to be tempted to use them, Fauna said to Aurora. But the wands were hard to catch and zoomed around the room. They did not like the idea of being put away. Shall we decorate? Aurora asked. She led the fairies to baskets of evergreen garlands, ornaments, and pretty bows. Let's start trimming the tree, Merryweather explained. We should hang the evergreen garlands first, Flora said. Aurora knew that waiting for her aunts to agree on something could take all day. So she suggested that she and Flora put up the evergreen garlands, while Fauna and Merryweather decorated the tree. Soon, Aurora and the fairies moved on to the kitchen. It was time to begin baking their Christmas treats. I can't wait until Philip tastes your special layer cake or the Christmas jam rolls, said Aurora. We'll need lots of red frosting, Flora announced. Green frosting is prettier, Merryweather argued. We'll use both, Aurora declared. The next morning over breakfast, Aurora and the good fairies talked about a gift for Philip. I want to give him a homemade present, Aurora said to her aunts. But what? How about a shirt? Flora suggested. But I don't know how to sew, the princess replied sadly. We'll show you how, Merryweather said. Aurora smiled. Do you remember the stockings you sewed when I was a little girl? She asked. Of course, Flora said. We forgot to stitch up the bottoms and the gifts fell out. You'd say, look, her stockings are empty. We better fill it up with more treats, Aurora said, chuckling as she remembered the happy time she had shared with the fairies. All morning the fairies worked with Aurora, teaching her how to cut fabric and how to sew a shirt. Oh dear, the princess said when she looked down at her sewing. This shirt isn't looking quite right. The fairies quickly set aside their own projects to help Aurora with Philip's shirt. When Aurora finished Philip's gift, the fairies helped her get ready. The prince would be home soon. The fairies made a crown of holly for the princess's hair. Next, they had to decide what she would wear. Flora suggested a red dress. Merryweather preferred a blue one. Then Flora held up a beautiful purple gown. Aurora tried it on. The dress was perfect. Even Flora and Merryweather had to admit the purple dress looked lovely on the princess. The last thing Aurora had to do was wrap the princess' gift. Once again, she asked for the fairies' help. When they had finished, the princess placed the presents under the tree. That afternoon, Prince Philip arrived back at the castle. Aurora was eagerly waiting for him. Close your eyes, she said with a sly grin, and don't open them until I tell you. Aurora led Philip into the grand hall, where Flora, Fauna, and Merryweather were waiting. Philip looked around. Crooked wreaths and dangled from the walls. The Christmas tree was decorated only on one side. Lopsided cake, burnt tarts, misshapen cookies filled the table. I've never seen preparations like these before, Philip said politely. I can see why you find them so special. Try a lemon tart, Aurora said. Philip looked at and nibbled it. Suddenly a strange look came over his face. The lemon tart tasted horrible. Oh dear, Fauna said. We must have forgotten the sugar. Aurora handed Philip his gift. One more surprise, she said. A shirt, the prince exclaimed after opening the box. But when Philip tried on his present, the princess and the fairies burst out into laughter. Oh dear, that's certainly not the right size, Aurora said. The sleeves were far too long. Aurora knew her Christmas present wasn't perfect, but sharing a homemade holiday with Philip and her aunts had made it the best one Aurora could remember. The end. Day 15. Merida and the Missing Gem. Ugh, Merida complained. I spent all month working on a fancy brooch for Mum, but her birthday's tomorrow and it's still not right. Maudie chuckled in sympathy, but didn't reply. As cook and nursemaid at Castle Dunbar, she was more worried about her latest batch of hot muffins. Who are those for? Asked Merida. Don't touch. These are for the Dunbar elf that lives outside the gate. He keeps things right in our castle, Maudie replied. Have you ever seen him? Asked Merida. Elves don't like to be seen by humans, explained Maudie. But every day I leave him muffins, milk and thistles for good luck. If the elf isn't happy, who knows what mischief he could make, especially with those Queen's birthday tomorrow. Merida sighed again, thinking about her Mum's birthday. The brooch had started as a good idea. Merida chose a beautiful smoky quartz, her mother's favourite gem. Then she designed the setting herself. But when it was all put together, it didn't seem right. Maybe, she thought, she should take another look at the gem. But it was gone. Then Merida saw her brothers' guilty faces. The wee devils must have taken it. Merida quickly realized what had happened. Her brothers hadn't meant to cause trouble. They only borrowed the brooch because it looked so royal on their capes. But somehow, as they played, the brooch had become lost. "Oh, come now, lads," asked Merida. "You must have dropped it somewhere. Think." Then Merida looked more closely at Herbert's shirt. "Is this a thistle?" she asked. Then she looked at the others. "Are those crumbs on your shoes? Is that milk on your face?" Suddenly, Merida had a very good idea where the triplets had been playing that morning. Merida led the boys down near the gate, under the bridge, to a large flat rock. "Just as I thought," Merida said. "You ate the treats that Molly made for the Dumbroff elf." She nodded. "So now we know where you lost the gem." Merida and her brothers looked all around the clearing, but they couldn't find the brooch. Merida had another thought. "What if the elf took the brooch? Because you three ate his treats. Molly said he makes mischief if he isn't taken care of." Quickly, she gave the boys different directions. Hamish got more muffins, Herbert got more milk, Harris got more thistles, and Merida tidied up the clearing. Merida set up the tray and rearranged the thistle banquet. The boys looked at each other. They weren't so sure about elves. But Merida had no doubts. She told her brothers to hide and be still. Nothing happened. Then Merida remembered that elves don't like humans to see them, so she tried something else. "Dumbroff elf," Merida whispered into the air. "We're sorry your treats were taken, but we tried to fix everything. Could you help us in return?" There was only silence. Finally, they opened their eyes, and then Harris spotted something shiny in the crook of a tree. It was the brooch. Had the elf really just returned it, or had it been there the whole time? And even stranger, when Merida examined the gem more closely, she saw that something was very different about it. The next evening, Merida presented the birthday brooch to her mother. "My favourite gem, set in a silver thistle," Eleanor exclaimed. "What better luck could I have than to have you as my daughter?" Beaming, Merida knew that everything was set right, and things were positively perfect. The end. Day 16. A perfect party. Cinderella and the prince sat before a roaring fire. Christmas was coming in a few days, and Cinderella was excited. "Let's throw a party," she suggested to the prince. "What a splendid idea," he replied. "How can I help?" Cinderella smiled. "Just leave everything to me," she said. The next day, the princess began to decorate. "May we help Cinderella?" Jacques and Gus asked. "Of course," she replied. "Let's start with the grand staircase." When the mice tied some bows and spool of ribbon began to roll down the banister, Gus hopped aboard. It was just like a sleigh ride, without the sleigh. When Cinderella and her friends finished the staircase, they moved on to the rest of the castle. Jacques and Gus helped the princess put garlands over the windows in the ballroom, with pretty bells and baubles. They tied sprigs of holly over the doorways. They even hung stockings by the fireplace and lit candles. They gave the rooms a cozy glow. Finally, Cinderella and her friends moved to the stone patio where Cinderella planned to hold her party. "Won't our guests be chilly out here?" the prince asked. "I'm sure it will be fine," Cinderella replied. "Besides, what could be more magical than celebrating under the stars?" "I like the stars. They're twinkly," Gus said as he nibbled on a popcorn garland. Gus, Jack scolded. You're supposed to be hanging decorations, not eating them. Later, Cinderella went to the royal sewing room. When Prudence, the head of the household staff, peeked in, she saw Princess sewing a handkerchief. Why don't you ask the royal seamstress to do that? Prudence suggested. I'm making presents for our guests, Cinderella said. It gives them a personal touch if I do them myself. On Christmas Eve, the royal chef came to speak with Cinderella. He wanted to know what he should cook for the party. Not a thing, Cinderella replied. Later, Prudence saw her in the storeroom, filling baskets with fruit, ears of corn, and different kinds of cheese. She was appalled. Back on the patio, Cinderella laid out the food. She said, something's missing, but what? Suddenly, Cinderella's fairy godmother magically appeared. My dear, you need a centerpiece, she said. Waving her wand, she turned a water jug into an ice sculpture. Now everything is perfect for our Christmas picnic, Cinderella exclaimed. When Cinderella left to change her gown, the fairy godmother slipped into the banquet room. Oh no, she said, looking at the decorations Cinderella and the mice had hung. This will never do for a royal ball. The fairy godmother waved her wand. Instantly, an elaborate feast appeared. She waved her wands twice more, and the court musicians appeared ready to play. Now, that's more like it, the fairy godmother said. When Cinderella and the prince walked past the banquet room, the princess couldn't believe her eyes. Just then Prudence rushed in. Where are your guests? She asked Cinderella. My party isn't being held in here, Cinderella told her. Then what is? Prudence asked. Thinking quickly, the princess said, a Christmas party in honor of the royal staff. Would you please tell everyone else? What a wonderful surprise, the housekeeper exclaimed. Cinderella opened the patio doors. Merry Christmas! A chorus of chirps, barks, and winks answered her. All of Cinderella's animal friends had gathered for her party. Happy Christmas, Cinderella, Gus shouted. Merry Christmas, Jacques said, correcting him. After lots of delicious food, it was time for presents. There were new feed bags, cozy blankets, and stylish mouse-sized outfits. Jack loved his new jacket so much they couldn't stop looking at his reflection. Later, the prince and Cinderella danced underneath the stars. When they stopped, they realized they were alone. Oh my, look, Cinderella cried. Their animal friends had gone inside and were with the staff. Delighted that everyone was getting along, Cinderella and the prince joined them. It was the most unusual and the merriest Christmas celebration they ever had. The end. Day 17. Khan to the rescue. Mulan sighed loudly as she dipped her brush into the pot of ink and gently touched it to the paper in front of her. She hated practicing calligraphy. It was so boring. Outside, she heard a horse neigh in the distance. Mulan wished she was out there too, not stuck inside with the musty ink pot and her own thoughts. Ignore it, she told herself. Calligraphy, calligraphy, calligraphy. Nay! Mulan jumped a mile. Her horse Khan was standing right outside her window. Mulan hurried outside. Right away she noticed something alarming. That's grandmother's hat, Mulan said to Khan. And that's grandmother's basket. And now come to think of it, grandmother was going to take you down to the orchard today, and here you are. But where's grandmother? Khan pawed the ground impatiently and tossed his head back and forward to the saddle. You want me to climb up? Mulan guessed. Will you take me to her? I want to, Mulan told Khan, but I have to study. Maybe I can get someone from the village to see what grandmother wants. Khan butted her urgently with his big soft nose. Unless something was wrong. Maybe that's why Khan was being so impatient. Her grandmother needed her. All right, Mulan said, making a decision. Take me to her. She would study when she returned home. The moment Mulan settled onto the saddle, Khan leapt into a full gallop. Mulan held on for dear life as the horse sped throughout the countryside. They galloped over hills and through valleys. They jumped over fallen trees and splashed through rivers. Soon they arrived at the orchard, and Khan stopped in front of an old cherry blossom tree. Mulan slid down the saddle. "Grandmother," she called. Mulan looked all around but couldn't see her grandmother. "Up here!" Mulan looked up into the tree. "The ladder fell," Grandmother Fa said, "and I couldn't climb down. I'm so happy to see you, Mulan." "I'll get you down right away," Mulan promised. But when she picked up the ladder, it fell apart in her hands. "Oh no," Mulan said, "the ladder is broken." Grandmother Fa looked worried. "Maybe you should go get help from the village," she said. "It would take forever," Mulan replied. "Don't worry, Grandmother. I've got this." Mulan looked around. "Okay," she muttered to herself. "Let's see what we have to work with. 1 horse, 1 saddle, 2 baskets, 1 bridle." Aha! She had the perfect plan. First, she unbuckled Khan's reins from his bridle and tied a piece of her sash to them. Then she tied one end of the leather strap to a basket. Mulan tossed the strap up to her grandmother. "Sling it over the branch," she instructed. Then she tied the other end to Khan's saddle. Mulan held Khan's bridle and backed him slowly away from the tree. The strap pulled tight and the basket rose up into the air until it was right next to Grandma Fa. "Step into your chariot, Grandmother," Mulan said with a grin. Once her grandmother was safe in the basket, Mulan led Khan forwards, step by step, until the basket was back on the ground. "You did it!" Grandma Fa cried, rushing over to hug Mulan. "You brave girl." "Well," Mulan said, blushing, "not that brave. I mean, I wasn't the one stuck up a tree." "You are brave," Grandma Fa said. "Brave and brilliant." Mulan and Grandma Fa took their time returning home. Khan didn't seem to mind. He paused to graze as they went. "Father will be angry," Mulan told her grandmother nervously. "I was supposed to be practicing calligraphy today." Grandmother Fa made a thoughtful sound. "I think I can help with that. Just this once," she said. That evening at dinner, Mulan's father asked how her studies had gone. "Actually," Grandma Fa spoke up, "I helped Mulan with her calligraphy today." "Oh?" Mulan's father said. He turned to Mulan. "What character did you practice?" "The character of courage," she replied. Mulan and her Grandma Fa shared a secret smile. "I had a great teacher." The end. Day 18. A Day with Moana. The morning sun rose high over Montouini as Moana headed through the village. "Good morning," Moana said, approaching 2 women with baskets of food. "How are things?" "Hi, Moana. It's a fine day, but we're low on sugarcane and won't have enough for what we're making." "I can help," Moana volunteered. "I'll gather some more for you." Moana and a group of children from the village set off to find more sugarcane. The forest was full of giant trees, colourful plants, and rocks and boulders of all sizes. Without any clear path to walk along, It was obvious why Moana had told the children to stick together. Moana looked for visual signs to help her find her way. "See, that rock over there looks like Pua," Moana said. The kids loved Pua and could picture him as if he were right there. Moana pulled aside some thick green vines, revealing a large grove of coconut trees. "Could we stop for a snack?" Lumi asked. "That's just what I was thinking," Moana replied. Lalumi and Toa scrambled up trees. They picked the ripest fruits, then tossed them down. After they broke open the coconuts against a rock, they devoured the white meat and drank the sweet water inside. It was a refreshing break. "Do we have time for a game?" Vituau asked, since they reached the coconut grove sooner than Moana had expected. She figured a quick game wouldn't hurt. "How about a round of hide and seek?" she asked. "Yes," the children exclaimed. They scattered in every direction. "But stay close by," Moana called after them. She shut her eyes and began to count. While he was looking for a place to hide, Toa saw a colourful bird he'd never seen before. He began to follow the bird. "Time's up," Moana yelled. She opened her eyes and began to look for the children. In a matter of minutes, Moana had found Vituau, Lalumi, and Mashina. That meant only Toa was left, but no matter where she looked, Moana couldn't find him. "Good job, Toa had found the best hiding spot. You can come out now," Moana said. When he didn't appear, Moana was worried he was lost. Meanwhile, Toa had followed the colourful bird all the way back to its nest. He returned round to show his friends, but realised he was all alone. He started to worry, but he remembered what Moana had said earlier, and he sat down and waited for her to find him. Moana and the other children went back through the vines towards the pyre-shaped rock. It was there that Moana noticed some bright blue feathers. "Maybe he went this way," she said. They picked up the feathers and continued walking. Not far away, they came upon another clearing, and there was someone familiar sitting on the rock. "Toa!" Viatu cried as Moana hugged him. They were relieved to see he was safe and sound. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't mean to go off so far. I was following that bird that ended up here." He pointed to a nest in a tree hollow. Moana looked up to see a bird with several baby chicks. Toa had stumbled upon a mother bird as she was returning to her family. "Well, it looks like everyone is back together," Moana said, smiling. "Look over there," directed Viatu. "There's the tallest grass I've ever seen," added Mashina. "Look over there," directed Vituau. "There's the tallest grass I've ever seen," added Masana. Moana followed the girls and couldn't believe their eyes. Thanks to their unexpected detour, they found a shortcut to the sugarcane field. "This is exactly what we're looking for," Moana cheered. She broke off pieces of the sugarcane stalks and passed them to the children, who arranged them in piles. After gathering as much as their arms could carry, it was time to head home. "Before we go," Moana said, "let's create a sign to mark the new shortcut." They carved an outline of the bird onto the ground with sticks. Finally, they stuck the blue feathers they collected in the ground, next to their new landmark. It was a perfect way to end their afternoon. Soon Moana and the children arrived back in the village. Moana gave the basket of sugar cane to the women, who were delighted to see the bright, juicy stalks. "Thank you, Moana," one woman exclaimed. "These are wonderful." "It was our pleasure," Moana replied. As they said goodbye, Moana gave each child a hongi, pressing her nose against theirs. "When I grow up, I want to be just like you," Toa said. Moana was touched. As Grandmama Tala says, "You can be whatever your heart tells you." Moana smiled all the way home. Her heart felt as full as the basket of sugar cane. The end. Day 19. Tiana and the Jewel of the Bayou. One summer morning, Tiana, Naveen, Eudora, and Charlotte were discussing party plans. Tiana's birthday was just days away. Prince Naveen was worried. Although he had spent weeks looking, he still hadn't found the perfect gift for his princess. And now time was running out. The prince had looked at everything, from priceless paintings to fine French perfume to beautiful silk and lace. But he had always come home empty-handed. Nothing seemed special enough for Princess Tiana. Luckily, the following day, Naveen overheard Tiana speaking with Charlotte in the kitchen. When my daddy and I used to go fishing in the bayou, we'd sometimes find a piece of swamp amber, said Tiana. I thought it was the most precious thing in all the world. That's it, whispered Naveen, and he dashed out the door. Naveen met up with the jazz-loving alligator Louis. The two of them went to ask Mama Odie if she could help them find some swamp amber. You don't need my help, said Mama Odie, laughing. Go find it yourselves. You know what to do. As the birthday party was about to begin, Tiana couldn't find Naveen anywhere. One of the guests said he saw the prince down by the old mossy tree in the bayou. Eudora and Charlotte told Tiana not to worry, but Tiana was afraid Naveen might be in trouble. Tiana ran down to the river and climbed into a rowing boat. As she rowed into the bayou, she saw Naveen in the distance. He was diving into the water at the base of the old tree. Louis was on the bank, trying to get a thorn out of his foot. Naveen, Tiana called out. When the prince didn't resurface, she removed the sashes and petticoats from her dress and dived into the water. She found Naveen in a tangle of roots. He motioned to her that he was fine, but Tiana grabbed his hand and pulled him to the surface. I was worried about you, said Tiana. Naveen reassured her that everything was fine and gave her a hug. Then Tiana and Naveen looked at each other and laughed. They were both covered in mud. Naveen opened his hand to reveal a plain, muddy rock. I'm a little embarrassed, he said. I was expecting a sparkling jewel, but this is just swamp amber, Tiana exclaimed. What a wonderful birthday surprise! When Tiana and Naveen returned to the party, all the guests gasped at the sight of them. Then Charlotte saw the birthday gift and screamed in fright. But Tiana explained that the muddy rock brought back wonderful, loving memories of her father. That is the most precious gift of all, said Tiana. And now that Naveen is here with me, I couldn't ask for anything more. As the prince and princess went to change their clothes, Mama Odie picked up the swamp amber. A little sparkle couldn't hurt, she said, tossing the rock into a pot of gumbo. Gumbo, gumbo, in the pot. We need some sparkle. What you got? In a puff of magic, the swamp amber became a dazzling golden jewel set in a fine necklace. Mama Odie, Naveen explained. How did you do that? Mama Odie winked at Tiana. Oh, it's just a talent we have down here in the bayou. We like to take things that are a little slimy and rough round the edges and turn them into something wonderful. Tiana smiled. Like turning crawfish into gumbo, she said. Or a frog into a prince, Naveen agreed, as he took Tiana in his arms, and they danced the night away. The end. Day 20. The Great Birthday Search. Rapunzel buzzed with excitement. Today was her birthday, the first she would celebrate with her family after being trapped in a tower for 18 years. To honor the day, Rapunzel had spent weeks painting a special gift for her friends and family. At last, she applied the finishing touches before bouncing downstairs to greet her parents. "Happy birthday, Rapunzel," cheered the Queen. "Surprises are waiting for you all around the castle. Here is a map to show you where to look," the King said. "How fun," Rapunzel said, studying the map. "Come on, Pascal, let's start with the stables." "Good morning, Maximus," Rapunzel said. The royal guard horse whinnied happily and dropped an apple into her hand. "For me?" Rapunzel laughed. "Thank you." "Happy birthday," shouted Vladimir from the armory. "I was polishing my unicorn collection and want you to have this one. It's shiny and elegant, just like you." Rapunzel beamed as he handed her the delicate figure. "I'm truly honored, Vladimir," she said. The statue hall looked the same as always, except for one thing. "The new statue looks familiar," Rapunzel noted. Suddenly the statue moved. It was Pascal. The little chameleon had held out a birthday card. "Did you make it yourself?" Rapunzel asked. Pascal nodded. "I love it." On her way to the kitchen, Rapunzel walked through the dining room. "Nothing to see here." Rapunzel found Atla decorating an enormous birthday cake in the kitchen. "Looks delicious," said Rapunzel. "But it's awfully big." "Well, Atla stammered, "I made it extra large so you have to have leftover cake for breakfast every day this week." In the throne room, Eugene presented her with a brand new frying pan. "Just in case you need to protect yourself again," he said, rubbing a spot on his head where he'd met Rapunzel's last frying pan. "Oh, Eugene is perfect," Rapunzel said, testing its weight. Eugene ducked just in time. The moment she walked into the hall of portraits, Hook Hands started playing a birthday melody on the piano. Olaf mimed the dramatic scene, and the jester did silly tricks as Rapunzel and Pascal danced along. All of Rapunzel's friends had given her such thoughtful gifts. How could she ever thank them? She glanced at a large empty space on the wall and had an idea. But that idea would have to wait. There was one last room to visit for her final gift. Rapunzel's art studio was just as she left it that morning. Where was the last gift? She felt a breeze coming from the balcony. Rapunzel found her parents standing on the balcony holding 3 unlit lanterns. The Queen handed one to her. Rapunzel peered over the balcony and saw all the people of the kingdom holding their own lanterns. Her heart leapt. She had been looking forward to that moment all year. "During all those years, you were trapped in the tower. We sent glowing lanterns into the sky on your birthday, hoping we'd find you," the king reminded her. Rapunzel nodded, remembering how she watched the lights fill the night sky from the tower window. "It's up to you to decide what tradition means from now on," the Queen said, as she lit each lantern. Rapunzel smiled. "The best part of today was seeing my friends and family," she said. "I want the Lantern Festival to be a day for everyone to be together." With that, Rapunzel's family released their lanterns into the air. Soon the sky was filled with glowing lights. "There's one more surprise," said the king. "Put on your fanciest dress and meet us in the dining room." Rapunzel grinned. She had her own surprise up her sleeve. Rapunzel ran to her bedroom to change into her ball gown. Then she stopped in her studio once more before joining her parents in the dining room for a very special surprise. Happy birthday, Rapunzel. The end. Day 21. A Berry Special Friendship. One late summer afternoon, Pocahontas and her best friend, Nakama, were sharing the last of the season's strawberries. Soon there was only one berry left. "You have it, Pocahontas said to her friend. "No, you have it," said Nakama. After much back and forth, the friends decided to share the last strawberry. Early the next morning, Pocahontas woke up with an idea. She decided to go gather a fresh supply of berries as a surprise for Nakama. Strawberry season might be over, Pocahontas whispered to Flint as they tiptoed away from the village. But raspberry season was just to begin. Little did Pocahontas know, Nakama had planned a surprise. A short while after Pocahontas left with Flint, Nakama woke a sleepy Miko from his rest. "Let's gather a basket of blueberries for Pocahontas," she said, and the two headed into the woods. Not far into their trek, Pocahontas and Flint found a raspberry bush bursting with bright pink berries. As Pocahontas filled the basket, she popped a couple of juicy berries into her mouth. They were as delicious as they looked. In another part of the forest, Nakama and Miko had found a blueberry bush covered with plump blue fruit. In her eagerness to fill her basket, Nakama squeezed one berry too hard. Pop! Miko was happy to eat any fruit they could find. Pocahontas leant down to pick up the last of the raspberries. Suddenly, Flint fluttered around her head, trying to get her attention. "Just a minute, Flint," said Pocahontas. "I'm almost finished." When Pocahontas turned to drop the last berry into the basket, she discovered the basket was empty. Some of the forest animals had found themselves a tasty snack. Meanwhile, Miko eyed Nakama's full basket of blueberries. Surely it would be all right if he had a couple more berries. Nakama turned around and saw Miko had taken nearly half the berries from her basket. She let out a cry of surprise. "Miko!" Pocahontas heard Nakama's voice and raced through the forest with Flint to find her friend. "Nakama!" shouted Pocahontas. Nakama had just gathered up the fallen berries when Pocahontas' cry startled her. In her surprise, she dropped her basket. The blueberries landed on the ground and rolled into a path of hungry forest animals, who gobbled them up. "What happened?" Pocahontas asked Nakama. "I wanted to surprise you with a basket of blueberries," Nakama told her friend. Pocahontas smiled. "I wanted to surprise you with a basket of raspberries," she said. "At least we still have these," Pocahontas told her friend, and she handed the last raspberry to Nakama. Nakama smiled and gave Pocahontas the last blueberry. They both agreed that the sentiment was sweeter than any basket of fruit. Just as she finished her treat, Pocahontas noticed Miko handing out a red, heart-shaped berry. "Look," she said to Nakama, "a strawberry." "I thought we had picked all the strawberries," said Nakama. "There must have been a few unripe ones left," said Pocahontas. Miko led the two friends to a strawberry patch where fresh, ripe red berries hung from their stems, ready for picking. Pocahontas and Nakama picked the last ripe berries, while Miko and Flint stood guard. Soon there was only one strawberry left to be picked. "You pick it," Nakama told her friend. "No, you," insisted Pocahontas. The two friends laughed, and they picked the last berry together. The end. Day 22. Merida's Challenge.
Merida couldn't stop laughing. You three wee bairns think you can climb the Crone's Tooth? The Crone's Tooth was the tallest mountain around. Only the biggest and bravest people have climbed it, including me, she continued. Don't even try. Harris, Herbert, and Hamish scowled. Of course they could give it a try. They were big and brave too. They had to prove it to Merida. As they stood at the foot of the towering rock, Harris and Herbert wasn't so sure if it was a good idea, but Hamish was ready. I'll show her, he thought. Hamish offered to go first. His brothers gave him a boost, but he struggled to find handholds in the slippery rock. A little way up, the rock Hamish was standing on fell away. He was left dangling by his fingertips. Harris and Herbert hurried to fetch Merida. They found her in the castle and told her what happened to Hamish at the Crone's Tooth. "Ach, no!" cried Merida. "What have I done? I didn't really mean you should try to climb it by yourselves. Come on, we have to get Angus." But Merida was so worried she couldn't think straight. "Where are my arrows?" she cried to her brothers. Fortunately, Herbert was one step ahead of her and tossed them to his sister. When they got to Angus in the stables, Merida was still worried about they wouldn't make it to the Crone's Tooth in time to save Hamish. "I'm all thumbs," said Merida. I'll get this bridle on." Harris quickly helped his sister ready to ride. Soon they were galloping towards the Crone's Tooth. "Faster, Angus," Merida urged. "Faster!" Hamish was still hanging on when they arrived, but barely. He kicked the wall, trying to find a foothold. Something blue caught Merida's eye. "Wisps! I should have known." She called out to her brother. "Hold on, Hamish. Please hold on." Merida scanned the trees around the clearing. "Quick, Harris, Hubert, gather as many fallen leaves as you can. I have an idea." Soon they had formed a large pile under Hamish. Merida looped a rope around her waist and knotted it tightly. She tied an arrow into an arrow. Stepping back, she sent the arrow flying over the high branch of a tree. Then Harris hurried to fetch the arrow from the ground and tied the rope to Angus's saddle. "Angus," called Merida, "walk up that hill." The branch groaned as Angus pulled the rope taut. Everyone held their breath. "Keep pulling slowly," said Merida. The branch groaned again. The rope began to hoist Merida into the air. Fragments of rock pattered down as Hamish began to lose his grip. "Just a wee bit longer, Hamish," yelled Merida. "Ignore the wisps." Finally, Merida was high enough to grab her brother. "I've got you." Merida laughed, hugging him tightly. "Angus, you can start walking backwards now." Angus slowly lowered Merida and Hamish over the pile of leaves. When she was sure it was safe, Merida dropped Hamish on the leaves. The rescue mission was a success. "How brave you all were," Merida said to her brothers. "You, Hamish, for hanging in there so long. And you, Harrison and Hubert, for being so calm and reliable all through the rescue." But the triplets had one more thought on their minds. As the wisps flew away to cause mischief elsewhere, the brothers crossed their arms and looked to their sister. Okay, said Merida, laughing. "I promise I won't question your bravery again." The end. Day 23. A windy adventure. Snow White was visiting her 7 friends in the forest cottage. She woke up one windy morning to the sound of leaves blowing around outside her window. After the 7 friends marched off to the work, Snow White decided to clean up the cottage. Her woodland friends, an owl, a beaver, and a turtle, all helped. Snow White opened one of the kitchen cupboards. Potatoes, 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 she sighed. If only there was something different to eat. Suddenly, she had an idea. I know. I'll pick some fresh berries and nuts in the forest and bake a gooseberry nut pie. As Snow White and her animal friends walked into the forest, the wind whistled through the trees. It tangled Snow White's hair and made her cheeks turn pink, but she didn't mind. With all the juicy berries and fallen nuts they were collecting, she would be able to make a lovely pie that evening. Before long, she came to a fork in the trail. I've never taken the trail on the right before, she said, pointing to a long, shady path. It would be nice to go exploring, Snow White continued. I'm sure there are nuts and berries along that path too. Just then, a gust of wind blew her towards the new path. She laughed. I think that's a sign, don't you? She asked her friends. They headed down the trail and across a rickety wooden bridge. On the other side of the bridge, the trail wound left, then right, before opening into a sunlit grove. The clearing was filled with nut trees. How wonderful! Snow White exclaimed. She dashed from one to another. There were walnuts, chestnuts, and almond trees. The grove even had a cluster of gooseberry bushes. Snow White and her friends got to work, picking the nuts and berries in the grove. The wind whistled through the branches as Snow White filled her basket. Suddenly, a mighty gust snatched Snow White's cape right off her shoulders. Oh dear, she cried. She got up and began to chase the cape through the woods. The wind carried it down a pebbled path and past a large rock. It flew further and further away. Finally, the cape snagged on a tree branch. Snow White untangled it, but when she turned round, she realized she was lost. For a moment, Snow White was frightened. Then she put her hands on her hips. I'll just have to find my way back on my own, she said. Snow White looked around. Which way had she come from, the left or the right? Then she glanced at her feet. Her slippers were muddy. She left footprints in the dirt. I can follow my own tracks, she exclaimed. Snow White carefully followed her own trail of footprints, but soon the ground changed from dirt to pebbles. There weren't any footprints there. Suddenly, she noticed a large rock up ahead. I passed that when I chased my cape, she exclaimed. Snow White hurried towards the rock. Once she was there, she could see the grove in the distance. Owl, beaver, she called. Hearing her voice, the owl flew from the top of the walnut tree, and the beaver scrambled out to meet her. They both looked very relieved. I had such an adventure, Snow White told them, picking up her basket. Then she looked around. Oh, my, is Turtle not here yet? She asked. What if he got lost the same way I did? We better go and find him. Snow White, Owl, and Beaver hurried back along the forest path. When they reached the river's edge, they discovered that the wooden bridge had broken. Oh no, Snow White cried. She could see the poor turtle. He was stranded on a rock in the middle of the water. The wind must have caused the bridge to fall, with him on it. Don't worry, little turtle, she called. I'll save you. But the water was rushing too fast for her to swim. How could she rescue the turtle and fix the bridge? Owl, can you fly over? Snow White said thoughtfully. And Beaver is good at chewing. There must be something we can do. Suddenly, Snow White had an idea. She snapped a stick off a nearby tree and drew a picture of the broken bridge in the dirt. Here's what we need to do, she exclaimed to her friends. Owl, if you could fly over the other side and pick up the rope ends, Beaver can choose some new wooden stakes and I can hammer them into place. Together we can rebuild the bridge. The three friends went to work. The beaver liked to gnaw, so chewing new stakes from tree branches was easy for him. Once he had done, Snow White had hammered the stakes into the ground with a rock. Meanwhile, the owl flew across the river and took the ends of the ropes in his beak. But the bridge was too heavy, so he hooted to some of his bird friends to help him lift it out of the water. Then Snow White pulled the bridge taut and tied the ropes to the stakes. "Good as new," she cried. "Thank you, friends." Snow White quickly stepped onto the bridge. They had done such a good job, it hardly swayed at all. Snow White saw the turtle waiting on the rock just below her, but the water was picking up speed. She stretched down as far as she could and scooped the turtle up into her arms just in time. A big gush of water washed right over the rocks just as Snow White picked him up. The turtle breathed a sigh of relief. He nuzzled Snow White to thank her. "That's what friends are for," she said with a smile. "I think that's enough adventure for one day. Let's head home to bake that pie." Together, the friends made their way back down the path. This time, they knew just where they were going. When they all got back to the cottage, Snow White baked a lovely gooseberry nut pie. Just as it was coming out of the oven, the 7 friends arrived home. That's mighty delicious looking," Bashful said softly. "Did you have any problems today?" Doc asked. Snow White winked at Owl, the beaver, and the turtle. "Nothing we couldn't handle," she replied. The end. Day 24. The Christmas Treasure Hunt. It was just before Christmas, and Ariel and her husband, Prince Eric, were walking along the beach. Suddenly, Eric's dog Max ran up to them. He was carrying a waterlogged boot. "I've been searching for that boot for months," cried Eric. It looked like Eric needed a new pair of boots. Ariel decided to get him some for Christmas, but she only had a few days to think of gifts for everyone else. Ariel and Eric returned to the castle. As soon as they stepped inside, Catalina, the housekeeper, announced it was time for tea. "All righty," asked Grimsby, the butler, checking his pocket watch. He gave it a tap. Must be broken." Eric and Ariel invited Grimsby and Catalina to join them for some tasty treats beside the Christmas tree. "Isn't the tree beautiful?" Ariel remarked. Caroletta suggested we use red and gold decorations this year. "Why, thank you," Caroletta replied. "Those are my favorite colors." Ariel was delighted. Now she had a gift idea for Caroletta and Grimsby. The next day, Ariel went into town to do her Christmas shopping. There she found a perfect pair of boots for Eric. For a special surprise, she got a bottle with a tiny ship built inside. It reminded Ariel of the first time she met Eric beside his ship. Then she chose a skinny pocket watch for Grimsby and a gold necklace with a ruby pendant for Caroletta. For Max, Ariel stopped at the butcher shop and got the biggest bone she could find. Ariel still had to find gifts for her father, her sisters, and her friends from the sea. When she found a shop filled with colourful glass hearts, she knew her search was over. "What beautiful ornaments," Ariel told the shopkeeper. "I'll take them all." Back in the castle, Ariel carefully wrapped the gifts and wrote special messages for each one. Suddenly, Ariel heard a loud chewing noise. Max was gnawing happily on the bone she had got him. "No opening presents early, Max," she scolded. She took the bone and hid it with another present under the bed. On Christmas morning, everyone at the castle shared a festive breakfast. Afterwards, Ariel went to her room and got everyone's presents. But when she looked under the bed, all the presents were gone. She looked under the rug and inside the wardrobe. She even looked behind the curtains, but the gifts were nowhere to be found. Ariel, Eric called upstairs. It's time for presents. Ariel joined the prince by the tree. Is it all right if we do that later? I told my mer family and friends I'd meet them on the beach this morning. Ariel decided she could keep looking for the presents later. Of course, replied Eric. Come along, everyone. We're going on a Christmas visit. Ariel's friends Flounder, Sebastian, and Scottle waiting on the beach. Scottle the seagull handed Ariel a small chest. We thought these watchman thingies would come in handy. Ariel opened the lid and saw all sorts of treasures she had loved to collect when she was a mermaid. There was a bent fork and a cracked mirror. Thank you, Ariel exclaimed happily. We all helped to find them, Flounder said proudly. Just then, King Triton and Ariel's sister swam up. Merry Christmas, they called. Merry Christmas, Ariel replied, waving to her family. We bought presents, Ariel's sister, Aquatica shouted. Oh, thank you, Ariel exclaimed. I have gifts for all of you too, except... Woof, woof, Max barked. The dog ran up holding a boot. Your presents, Ariel said to Eric. Now she knew where the missing gifts were. Max had buried them on the beach. Ariel thought quickly. Surprise, everyone! We're going on a Christmas treasure hunt. Ariel, you're amazing, Eric said. Only you could turn Christmas into a new adventure. Soon, Eric, Helena, Max, and Grimsby were digging around the beach. Ariel's friends and Mer family cheered them on. Try digging near the old rowboat, Flounder called. Or near the sandcastle, Aquatica shouted. Each time someone discovered a present, Scottle will pick it up and deliver it to the right person. First class, airmail for Catalina, Scuttle called as he dropped a small package in the housekeeper's lap. The treasure hunt was loud, sandy, and most fun everyone could remember having on Christmas morning. Everyone loved Ariel's gifts. After the treasure hunt was over, everyone gathered by the water's edge to say goodbye. Merry Christmas, they called to each other as Ariel and Eric headed back to the castle. Back inside, Ariel and Eric sat by the fire and admired their gifts. What a wonderful Christmas tradition, Eric said. We should have a treasure hunt every year. Ariel smiled. It had been a day full of surprises, and sometimes the most unexpected treasures were the best. The end. Thank you very much for joining me again today. Do come back so we can read more books together. Please like and subscribe. Bye!